Hello everyone, today I will continue telling you the story of the single mother Hoai. I hope you enjoy watching the video. Since the day the twins were born, the small house of Hoai and Hung has felt noticeably warmer. The mornings are no longer quiet as before, but filled with the soft cries of newborns, whispered lullabies, and hurried footsteps on the cold tiled floor whenever one of the babies stirs. Hoai is tired, very tired, but she is happy. Hung is the same. He has gradually grown used to sleepless nights, to the scent of milk lingering on his clothes, to the feeling of holding his children in his arms and sensing his heart soften little by little. When Hoai carries one baby, Hung silently carries the other. No words are needed, a single glance between them is enough to say, "I'm here." Since having the two children, their bond has deepened in a very different way, no longer passionate promises, but a quiet, steady closeness. Yet as the twins' 1-month celebration draws nearer, an unnameable emptiness begins to form in Hoai's heart. She has quietly planned the offering table. The outfits for the babies have already been ordered. The invitation cards for relatives on both sides are nearly finished. Only one thing has never changed. Hung's mother has still not come to visit, even once. No phone call to ask how they are doing. No message to ask whether the babies are healthy. Even after learning that Hoai gave birth to twins, she has maintained a distance so cold it hurts. Hoai does not complain. She is afraid of putting Hung in a difficult position. But there are nights when, while rocking a baby to sleep, she cannot help but glance at Hung, sitting silently by the window, his gaze distant. Hung is sad, Hoai knows. He does not say it, but his silence weighs heavier than any reproach. Once, Hoai asked softly, "Did you tell your mother about the baby's 1-month celebration?" Hung stayed quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I did." And there was no reply. That brief sentence made Hoai's heart tighten. They both long for it, not for status, not for pride, but for the children. They wish Hung's mother would see her grandchildren just once, touch their tender skin just once, to know that Hoai is not an outsider, and that these two babies are truly blood of the family. But Hoai also understands, some distances cannot be bridged by time alone. Some prejudices are too deeply rooted. And perhaps, being accepted, is a very long road. The night before the 1-month celebration, Hoai lay beside Hung and whispered, "If your mother doesn't come, I won't blame you." Hung turned toward her and tightly held her hand. "But I blame myself." Hoai shook her head and smiled sadly. "As long as you and the children are here with me, that's enough." Outside, the two babies slept peacefully, their breathing even and soft. Inside Hoai and Hung's hearts, there was still a tiny hope, fragile, yet never extinguished. That one day, Hung's mother would step across this threshold, not with reluctance, but with love. Hoai and Hung decided not to hold a big celebration. After many nights of silent discussion, they both understood one thing clearly: if Hung's mother was absent, a crowded party would only make that emptiness more obvious. They did not want their children's day overshadowed by scrutinizing glances or careless questions that reopened wounds not yet healed. That evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Hoai leaned against the headboard and said softly, "Maybe we should just do something small." Hung turned to look at her. "Who do you want to invite?" "Only those who truly love the children." She hesitated for a moment, then continued, "Tiểu San and Hoai." Hung nodded almost immediately. "Yes. That's enough." No further words were needed. They both understood, it was the gentlest choice for their children, and for themselves. From that day on, small changes appeared in the house. Not the bustling atmosphere of party preparations, but a quiet busyness. Hoai carefully wrote down what needed to be bought in a small notebook: flowers, sticky rice, and sweet soup, a few simple dishes for the ceremony. She paused for a long moment at the last line, then softly underlined 2 words: just enough. Hung took time to tidy up the living room, adjusted the old wooden table, replaced the light bulb with a softer yellow glow. At times, he would stand still in the middle of the room, his eyes drifting toward the empty space where an elderly figure should have been sitting. But there was none. No phone call. No message from his mother. Hoai sensed it through Hung's quietness. He did not speak, but every time he picked up his phone only to put it down again, she could clearly see the waiting, and the disappointment, in his eyes. One afternoon, Hoai carried the twins into the living room and placed them side by side in a small cradle. She gazed at their faces, so remarkably alike, her heart softening yet sinking at the same time. She wished, deeply, that one day, the children's grandmother would see this moment. But for now, Hoai could only do one thing: prepare everything as carefully and as warmly as possible, within the small world that she and Hung could protect. Hung walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. Even if it's just a small gathering, I still want to do it properly. Hoai nodded and smiled faintly. As long as the children can feel the love, that's enough. Outside, the 1-month day was drawing closer. The celebration had not yet taken place, the guests had not yet arrived, but inside that small house, there was already the careful preparation of love, and quiet hopes whose fulfillment remained uncertain. That afternoon, while Tiểu San was tidying up her stall, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, saw Hoai's name, and smiled as she answered. San. Hoai's voice on the other end hesitated slightly, but remained gentle. This weekend, we're having a small 1-month celebration for the twins. Nothing big. Hung and I would love to invite you and Hai to come over. Tiểu San paused for a second, then her eyes softened. Of course I'll come. Definitely. Hearing that answer, Hoai's voice immediately lightened. That makes me really happy. It's just a small gathering. Small or big doesn't matter, Tiểu San laughed softly. What matters is the babies. After hanging up, Tiểu San kept holding her phone for a few more seconds. A clear warmth spread through her chest, not the excitement of a party, but the feeling of being trusted, of being invited into a quiet, intimate moment of a small family. That evening, when Hai came home, Tiểu San told him. Hoai invited us to the twins' 1-month celebration. Hai looked a little surprised, then nodded right away. That's great. We should prepare the gifts carefully. The next morning, the two of them stopped by a shop specializing in baby items. The space was small but bright, filled with adorable little things. Tiểu San stood in front of the baby clothes for quite a while, her fingers brushing against the tiny outfits, her gaze softening. They're so small, she murmured. Only 1 month old, and there are already 2 of them. Hai stood beside her, following her gaze. Let's buy matching outfits for both babies. That way, neither feels left out. Tiểu San nodded and chose 2 identical sets, light-colored, made of soft fabric. She carefully asked the staff about the size and safety before finally feeling reassured. Then Hai suggested. Let's add a small red envelope too. Not much, just a little blessing for their first days. Tiểu San agreed. She also stopped by the toy section and picked out 2 small rattles, their sound gentle, not loud, not sharp. For them to play with when they're a bit older, she said, as if already thinking about the days ahead. Leaving the store, the 2 of them stood under the late afternoon sun, each carrying a small gift bag. Neither said it out loud, but both Tiểu San and Hoài understood. The upcoming celebration was not just a polite invitation, but a sincere sharing from Hoài and Hùng, during a time filled with happiness, yet also quiet heartache. Tiểu San looked down at the gift bag in her hand and said softly, "I hope that day Hoài will feel that she isn't alone." Hoài nodded. "At the very least, that day there will be people who truly wish the babies well." The 1-month day had not yet arrived. But from that moment, joy had already begun to spread, small, yet warm enough. That evening, when Tiểu San and Hoài arrived, Hoài hurried out to greet them. She seemed a little flustered, not because of the guests, but because of the feeling that someone genuinely cared about her children. "San, you're here." Hoài voice softened the moment she saw Tiểu San. Tiểu San smiled and placed the small gift bags on the table. "Yes. Hoài and I came a bit early." Hoài quickly waved her hand. "I told you already, just having you here makes us so happy." Tiểu San didn't say more. She opened the last gift bag and took out a small box wrapped in pale velvet. Her movements were slow and careful, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. When the box opened, Hoài froze. Inside were 2 tiny gold bracelets, delicate and perfectly sized for a newborn's wrist. The gold wasn't flashy, only gently shimmering under the light. Tiểu San spoke softly. "I chose 2 identical ones. Jewelry for babies isn't about showing off, it's for good luck." She looked at Hoài, her eyes sincere. "I hope the babies grow up healthy and safe. Having a bit of gold with them, it's like carrying good fortune from the very beginning." Hoài reached out and lightly touched one bracelet. Her fingers trembled. She didn't cry right away, her throat simply tightened. "I didn't expect you to prepare something so thoughtful." Tiểu San smiled gently. "They're Hung's children, after all. And besides, a 1-month celebration is important." Hùng, standing nearby, looked at the 2 bracelets for a long moment before speaking quietly. "Thank you." Tiểu San shook her head. "We're family. No need to say that." Hoài held the small box close to her chest, and only then did tears fall, silently, without a sound. She turned to look at her 2 babies sleeping peacefully in the cradle and whispered, "Maybe, today is the first time I truly feel that my children are genuinely being blessed." The meal was still in progress. The atmosphere in the house wasn't lively, but it was warm enough. The soft clinking of bowls and chopsticks, Hoài gently urging Hùng to eat a little more, Tiểu San leaning down to look at the twins sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside the table. Hoài sat quietly to one side, relaxed, a very family-like meal. Then the doorbell rang. No one stood up right away. Hùng froze for a brief moment, as if sensing something vague and unsettling. He set his chopsticks down and went to open the door. And then he stopped cold. His mother was standing there. She was neatly dressed, carrying a simple paper bag. No heavy makeup, no joyful expression, just an upright posture and a guarded, unreadable gaze. "Mom," Hùng spoke, his voice dropping instinctively. The entire dining table fell silent. Hoài stood up reflexively. Tiểu San turned around, her eyes openly surprised. Hoài frowned slightly, but remained silent. Hung's mother stepped inside. She didn't look around, didn't exchange pleasantries. She simply set the paper bag on the table and said curtly, "I stopped by to bring a few things for the babies." She opened the bag. Inside were a few newborn outfits, brand new, neatly folded, but very ordinary. No gift box. No congratulatory words. Hoai stood nearby, her hands tightening unconsciously. She lowered her head. "Thank you, Mom." Hung's mother gave a slight nod. Her gaze swept briefly over the two sleeping babies, lingering for less than a second, then moving away. "Mom, stay and have dinner with us." Hung spoke almost out of instinct. She shook her head. "I have things to do." Tieu San also stood up, her voice gentle. "You just arrived, Mom. Please stay a bit." But Hung's mother had already turned away. Not another word. The door closed very quickly. So quickly that no one had time to say anything else. Inside the house, the atmosphere sank heavily. Hoai stood still for a long moment before slowly sitting back down. She didn't cry. But her eyes were empty, as if she had just lost something she had quietly hoped for. Tieu San looked toward the door, then at Hoai. Her expression was clearly confused, not angry, just filled with unanswered questions. Hoai spoke in a low voice. "Your mom is strange." No one responded. Hung sat back in his seat, his hands clasped tightly together. He said nothing, but the entire room could feel the heaviness in his chest, between having come yet refusing to stay, between having seen the grandchildren yet keeping a distance so cold it hurt. The meal continued, but it no longer tasted complete. And in each person's heart lingered the same unspoken question. Why did Hung's mother come, at all? After the door closed, Hoai remained standing for a long time. She didn't look toward it. She didn't dare to. In her mind, the image of Hung's mother's straight back replayed, arriving so quickly, leaving just as fast. No reproach, no harsh words, yet it was that very silence that weighed heavily on Hoai's heart. At least, she came. The fleeting thought surfaced, only to make her heart sink even further. Hoai looked down at her sleeping babies. The two tiny gold bracelets glimmered softly under the light. Her throat tightened, not from self-pity, but from a feeling hard to name, the longing to be acknowledged, even just a little. She didn't need sweet words. She didn't need a grand celebration. She only wished that when the woman looked at those children, her heart might soften for even a moment. But that moment, perhaps never came. Hoai took a deep breath and sat back down at the table. She picked more food for Hung, a familiar reflex. "Eat, it's getting cold." Her voice sounded so normal that even she was surprised. Only her hands clenched tightly beneath the table, trembling slightly. "It's okay," she told herself. "If I haven't been accepted yet, I'll keep trying. As long as the children are safe, I can endure a little more." Tieu San talks privately with her brother. After the meal, Tieu San stepped outside onto the porch with Hung. The evening breeze was cooler, enough to soothe the heart, but not enough to erase the heaviness that remained. Tieu San leaned against the railing, silent for a moment before asking, "Mom, is she still like this lately?" Hung didn't answer right away. He looked out at the front yard, where his mother had just stood. "Yeah." Just one word, but Tieu San understood. She turned to her brother and spoke slowly. "I don't understand, if she already came, why didn't she stay? At least hold the babies for a bit." Hung let out a quiet laugh, but it was a sad one. "Maybe, she came just to tell herself that she had done her duty." Tieu San fell silent. She understood, but still felt pain on her sister-in-law's behalf. Hoai didn't say anything, but I know she's hurting. Hung nodded, his hands tightening. "I know. But I don't know what else I can do." Tieu San looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "Brother. Mom may not be used to it yet, may not have accepted it. but the babies are innocent. Hung turned to look at his sister. One day, Tieu San continued, Mom will understand that Hoai didn't take anything away from her. She's just building a family with you. Hung exhaled deeply, his voice low. I'm just afraid that Hoai will have to suffer. Tieu San shook her head. She's stronger than you think. But no matter how strong someone is, they still need time. The siblings stood there together for a long while, saying nothing more. In both their hearts was the same quiet wish, that this brief visit wasn't the end, but only a very slow step on the long road toward reconciliation. When everything had been cleaned up and the house returned to quiet, Tieu San stepped into the inner room. Hoai was sitting beside the cradle, bent over the babies, her hand resting gently on one child's back, as if afraid to wake them. Tieu San sat down beside her without speaking. She knew there were moments when silence was the best way to stay. After a while, Hoai spoke softly, her voice barely audible. Maybe I made Mom unhappy. Tieu San turned to her sister-in-law and shook her head. No, that's not it. Hoai pressed her lips together, her eyes still fixed on the babies. If she didn't want to come, then maybe I should understand. Tieu San gently placed her hand over Hoai's. You're being too hard on yourself. Hoai turned to her, her eyes red though she tried to hold back. You saw it, she came and then left. I don't understand what that means. Tieu San paused for a few seconds, then spoke slowly. But think about it, if Mom hadn't changed even a little, she wouldn't have come at all. Hoai froze. She came, Tieu San continued, her voice softer, and brought things for the babies with her own hands. Then don't hope too much. Just keep your heart light. You still have your children, Hung, and people who truly care about you. She looked at the sleeping babies. They're growing up surrounded by love like this, sooner or later, Mom will see it. Hoai turned to look at Tieu San. Her eyes were no longer as empty as before, there was a small, gentle warmth now. Thank you, she whispered. You've made me feel lighter. Tieu San shook her head. We're family. Loving each other is enough. Outside, night had fully fallen. Inside the small room, the two babies slept peacefully, their breathing steady. And in Hoai's heart, though many worries remained, there was now a fragile glimmer of hope, that one day, things might slowly change.
Hello mọi người, cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video hôm nay của mình. Chúc mọi người có một ngày mới vui vẻ, hạnh phúc và một ngày làm việc tràn đầy năng lượng. Hy vọng là những video của mình sẽ đem lại niềm vui nhỏ cho mọi người trong cuộc sống và cũng như chúc mọi người thư giãn sau một ngày làm việc mệt mỏi. Hiện tại thì những video của mình đang được phát hành vào khung giờ 7 giờ tối và 7 giờ sáng tại Việt Nam. Nếu mà mọi người yêu thích thì mọi người nhớ bấm nút theo dõi, bật chuông thông báo để nhận thông báo khi mình đăng video mới nhất và ủng hộ kênh của mình để giới thiệu cho bạn bè mình biết đến và để mình có động lực ra nhiều video hơn cho mọi người cùng xem. Và cảm ơn mọi người đã yêu thích cái video của mình. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video lần sau nha.